Nearly every ancient culture tells the same story. A world-ending flood, a paradise lost beneath rising waters. You've heard it in the story of Noah. You've read it in the Epic of Gilgamesh. But what if it was real? What if all of these stories were the fading memory of a real catastrophe? A forgotten land, now buried beneath the Persian Gulf. 15,000 years ago, the Persian Gulf wasn't filled with water. It was dry, a vast, fertile basin surrounded by desert. This forgotten land was fed by four mighty rivers: the Tigris, the Euphrates, the Karun, and the Wadi Batin. Together, they created one of the most fertile regions on Earth. And if that sounds familiar, it should. The book of Genesis describes Eden as a place where one river split into four.
Genesis 2:10. Now a river flowed out of Eden to water the garden, and from there it divided and became four rivers.
Archaeologists now believe this was no allegory. This may have been a real place, a lush, well-watered land, a perfect cradle for early human life. The Persian Gulf Basin was the ideal natural refuge, protected by mountain ranges, nourished by rivers and underground springs. While much of the Middle East was a scorched, lifeless desert, this hidden valley remained a green sanctuary, a rare haven for the first people migrating out of Africa during the Ice Age, a paradise, just waiting to be remembered. But paradise didn't last. Around 12,000 BC, everything began to change. The great glaciers that had covered much of the world began to melt. Temperatures rose, ice turned to water, and slowly, the oceans began to rise. Not in a violent instant, but steadily, year after year. Like a creeping curse, the sea began reclaiming the land, and the Gulf Basin, that lush green valley that had fed and sheltered generations, began to drown. First, the lowlands vanished, then the rivers backed up. Wetlands turned to swamps, and then to shallow seas. Over thousands of years, between 12,000 and 6,000 BC, the entire Persian Gulf was swallowed by the sea. We know this from sea level reconstructions and satellite bathymetry. What is now 230,000 square kilometers of shallow water was once dry, livable land, a landmass larger than England. Let that sink in for a minute. Landmass larger than England. And we know what ancient man did there. But for the people who lived there, the change wasn't geological, it was personal. Imagine watching your world disappear in slow motion. Your hunting trails, gone. Your ancestors' burial mounds, gone. Generation after generation, watching the water creep closer, until eventually, the land that once gave life took it away. It would have felt apocalyptic, like divine punishment, like the end of everything. And when the waters rose for the final time, the people left. They had no choice. They took their families, their tools, their stories, and they followed the rivers inland, searching for safety, searching for dry land. But they carried something else with them, a memory of the Great Flood. The people who fled the drowning Gulf didn't vanish. They followed the rivers. They went where the waters still gave life. Not too much, not too little. And eventually they found it. A new home near the mouths of the very rivers that once fed their sunken land. Today we call this place Mesopotamia, between the Tigris and Euphrates. They settled and they remembered, and over generations, these flood survivors built villages. Villages became towns, towns became cities, and in time, they became the Sumerians, the first known civilization in human history. They gave us writing, they gave us astronomy, they built temples, ziggurats, and legal codes. But buried in their myths was the story they never forgot. A flood sent by the gods, a man warned in a dream, a boat built to save life. But before Noah, there was Utnapishtim, the Sumerian flood survivor in the Epic of Gilgamesh.
Tear down your house, the god tells him.
Build a Abandon your possessions. Save life.